Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bound. On today's show, we're celebrating the cream of the cinematic crop because, oh yes, the Oscars are just a week away. Held at the good old Dolby Theatre, we await the 97th Academy Awards with bated breath. Who'll pick up the little gold men? Who'll race from the back of the pack to stun the front runners? Who'll be headed for an early bath at the chateau? And which film will be up all night in celebration in the next door suite, ordering who knows what on room service? We're projecting our own expectations here, clearly. Today, we'll highlight those nominated for this heavy prize by exploring categories including Best Animated Feature, Best Adapted Screenplay, and of course, Best Picture. Silver screens and gold men. That's the theme of all that's coming up in the next half hour here on Monocle on Culture. First up, The Substance, which is a play on body horror and ideas of Hollywood beauty. And it stars Demi Moore as an older actress who makes a Faustian pact for eternal beauty, and Margaret Qualley as that beauty. Directed by Coralie Farget, the film looks into the striving for and strife of attaining perfection. A kind of picture of Dorian Gray on extreme anti-aging steroids. The film is up for 5 Oscars, including Best Director, Best Actress for Demi Moore, and Best Makeup and Styling. Monocle's Fernando Augusto Pacheco spoke to Pierre-Olivier Persin, the lead makeup effects designer for the film, and they discussed the process for creating one of the film's key looks.
I remember many things happen in the bathroom, and most of the most complicated scenes, effects and makeup effects, and they happen in the bathroom. So I remember during prep asking Coralie about the lighting in the bathroom, some shadows and some typical horror movies kind of lighting to help with the practical side of it. And she said, yeah, sure. And then, we arrived on set and I discovered the harsh, very harsh light and the white tiles, on the walls, reflecting all the light and everything. I knew about the tight close-ups, but so wow. And but I guess, like you said, it really helps to be sucked into the craziness and the organic craziness of the story and the movies.
And to prepare, for example, Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley for all the prosthetics, that must take quite a while. There must be quite a big part of their day. How many hours, for example, on a normal kind of day in the set they would take, especially Demi Moore, I would say?
Yeah. Demi had anything between 45 minutes to 6 hours, 7 hours, maybe for the longest. The usual day would be 3:30 to 5 hours of makeup.
That's incredible. I wonder what she was doing during the makeup. I mean, maybe it's time to meditate while you become like a monster or something.
But she was really great because some actors, and I can understand, it's you have to sit still for 4 hours with people poking at your face and using glues, and it's not nice, like going to the dentist all over your face for 4 hours. And then you have to act and to work for 8 hours. So it's a lot to do and to ask. She was the best friend you can have in a makeup chair from a professional point of view. Really, she was with us and she was really looking at everything we were doing. And she was getting into character, always nice, in a nice mood. But she was not scrolling on her mobile for 4 hours and preventing you from doing a good job. She was not at all. She was not that at all. She was just a great. I have nothing but good things. She was a trooper and she was a nice person with us. She was really great.
A real professional there. What about Monstro Elisa Su? Of course, what a fantastic creation and incredibly original. Was that perhaps the one that you took the longest to make? Because I'm sure Coralie gave you some directions of what you wanted with it, and then you had to create that magnificent creature.
Yes, that took the longest. The design of Monstro was the hardest on the show. it was really important. The character was really important to Coralie. Everything was important for her, but Monstro, yeah, it was very important for her that it was kind of original, but at the same time, that all the tragedy and the emotion go through the makeup and the character. So she was not only a monster, but she was like a very human monster, a tragic monster.
And sympathetic as well,
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess I wonder if the character, I guess if she's not the happiest at that precise moment. I'm a mix of everything, and hey, I'm still me. I feel good. I feel good in my new body. I don't know. I wonder if she's surprised that people are rejecting her. And but yeah, we did everything from digital sculpting to traditional sculpting to Photoshop to sometimes I was sculpting. Coralie was sitting next to me for an hour or two at the workshop. I was sculpting, we're taking pictures, photoshopping them a little bit, and then I was finishing the sculpt, sending pictures to her the next day, and moving on, and that was quite a process.
A question about your work and Coralie's as well. Do you feel, especially on a film like this, the use of prosthetics, that organic feel, do you bring a kind of a French sensibility to it as well? Because it's true, some people say that some Hollywood films, perhaps there's too many like digital video effects, and even the audiences, they can notice a little bit. How is it? Do you think is this a French touch, or perhaps it's just unique to you in a way?
I don't know, nothing is unique to me. I mean, maybe about myself, but maybe if we have a French touch, that would be that we are used to work on auteur movies. I did my share of auteur, cinema. And so auteur cinema, you have a harsh lighting, and it's a tragedy in a kitchen with a harsh lighting, and then that's it. And you have to do prosthetics, under those conditions. And so maybe my training, in a way, I still work from time to time on auteur movies. I love them, and maybe I'm used to that. I've done more I've worked on more auteur movies than on horror movies in a way, I guess. And so I guess that was my training.
Oh, that's fantastic. And finally, Pierre, where is Monstro Elisa Sue now? Is she there in your studio? Are you keeping there, safe and quiet?
Bits of her, yes. Yeah. Maybe the legs are missing, but I have pretty much all the rest of her body.
Maybe she'll have to join you in Los Angeles later. So
yeah, maybe she should travel with us.
That was Pierre-Olivier Persin, special effects makeup designer for The Substance. The favourite for Best Animated Feature is The Wild Robot, a story featuring, as the title suggests, a robot who discovers her heart in the company of wild animals. Monocle's Gunnar Gronlid sat down with its director, industry legend Chris Sanders, and he first asked what drew him to Peter Brown's novel, upon which the film is based.
So many different things immediately struck me when DreamWorks showed me the book, and I visited, and I was dropping into like a development to see what they were up to, and they showed me this book and they described it, and just in the first couple of sentences I was like, okay, that's the one I'm interested in. I think the idea of a very innocent character like a robot in an environment where it is not supposed to be is immediately intriguing to me, and it hooked me. It was compelling. Yeah. And then to realize as I read the book that it's also about a robot who's becoming a mother by accident. We never get to do stories about a mom or that kind of, that core story. And so I think that was like, okay, that's it. Once I knew that, I was like, I have to do this movie. It's just going to be so, I think, compelling.
Yeah, and brought to life so amazingly by the cast and this new art style as well. I really want to ask you about that because you've gone through so many evolutions of different art styles throughout your career. How did you end up with this particular style for this film?
When I was reading the book, there was imagery that was coming to my mind. It was interesting that, like, we've been talking about Bambi a lot as relates to this project, and the imagery that was coming to mind was very much like the Tyrus Wong paintings, background paintings, and environments from Bambi, because that was the kind of sophistication that made that story resonate. And I was thinking the same thing with this. There's such fanciful characters. We've got animals that are talking, and we've got a robot. And in order for that to really resonate and feel real, I felt the forest had to feel as real as possible. And oddly enough, I think the best way to do that would be not to try to make a photo-real forest where you see every little pine needle and every little piece of bark, but instead to do a more painterly environment like they did in Bambi. And I was very fortunate to be at DreamWorks, where they had just made incredible advances visually with Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which have these really illustrated styles. And we pushed from that. We leveraged off of that and went even further and got this much more impressionistic feel. It wasn't just the backgrounds, it extended to the animals, because if they didn't have painted surfaces, it wouldn't feel right. So everything that you see in the film, save for Roz the robot in the very, very beginning, who we deliberately leave as a CG element at the very beginning. As she spends time, we trade out her surface 30 times as she becomes more and more a part of the environment, until she's 100% hand-painted, just like Fink the Fox or Pink-Tail the Possum.
And I mean, your love for animation and your passion for animation comes through so strongly, both in the films that you've made and you speaking about it now. What made you fall in love with the medium in the first place?
I loved drawing. I loved watching, films on the wonderful world of Disney. I used to buy little Super 8, Super 8 versions of some of the movies, little excerpts, and I'd put them on my projector, and I would frame by frame them to try to figure out how they did it. So I just loved art, and I loved animation. There was a particular moment. I was watching this film on the wonderful world of Disney called The Three Caballeros, which is a kind of it's a bit of it's strange. There's a few strange things about it. It's an odd movie, but at the core of it, there's this 3-minute or so sequence called The Three Caballeros, and it was animated by Ward Kimball. And I think he pretty much supervised the whole thing. I think he boarded it, animated it, and it is still one of the most amazing just moments of animation I've ever seen. I'll go back to it once a year at least just to watch it, because it just re-energizes me. Yes,
amazing.
It's so freeing. It's what animation is all about. It's mayhem, but it's beautiful.
And I mean, you're speaking a bit there to the sort of heart and soul of animation in a sense. And I mean, going back to the film, it's about a robot finding her heart and, in a sense, through that, enlarging the hearts of these creatures around her. And it's coming right at a time where artificial intelligence coming in, technological innovations, is sort of restoking all the fears about humanity losing its heart and soul to machines, and I imagine in the animation industry as well, people being afraid that this can replace the human artistry. What do you sort of think about that? Were you trying to say something about this with this film, and how do you feel about that sort of development in general?
Nothing intentional, because when Peter Brown wrote the novel in 2016, I think it was first published, that was definitely not a thing. And even when we began the project, it wasn't a thing. It really arose in the last year or so that we were working on the project. So it's a subject that comes up a lot. Now, the interesting thing is, technology, in the case of this movie, actually allowed more human contact than previously, because the environments we were just talking about, we have pushed the technology to the point where we can hand paint the backgrounds dimensionally, meaning we don't have to build trees and then wrap them in textures and then like rubber stamp it over and over again. This is one of them right here, and you can see these are just brush strokes. They're brush strokes. They have holes in them, and somebody free-handed this, a background painter. So a human being touched every single environment in this film: the background, the foreground, the midground. And so, so this is a more human and handmade film because of technology. And that's the funny thing. So I think that I've always contended, yes, when new things come along, it's disruptive, it's really exciting, sometimes it's also terrifying. Everything will eventually find its, I think, equilibrium. But yeah, technology allowed this to be a more human-made film than any I've worked on since Lilo and Stitch, where we were still hand-drawing everything.
That was Chris Sanders, director of The Wild Robot, speaking there to Gunnar Gronlid. Next up is one of this year's nominated documentaries. No Other Land shows the destruction of the occupied West Bank's Masafa Yatta region by Israeli soldiers. Directed by the Israeli journalist Yuval Abraham and Palestinian activist Basel Adra, the film, years in the making, documents the community's struggles with house demolitions, settler attacks and military actions, and the alliance between the two filmmakers who came together to tell the story. Monocle's Hassan Anderson spoke to Yuval and Basel and asked Basel first what the initial starting point was for a sadly familiar story.
I mean, I met like Yuval with like other activists. To be honest, it's not. I don't know. I know for people it's like something special, or they look at it like Israeli Palestinian working together and became friends. It's something like different, or yeah. But for our community, yeah. For me, I grow up like see all the time activists around and moving. I move with them, so wasn't something unique, to be honest, for me, that it's the first time happening. But with the time and working together, and almost weekly that we work together on the field, and we move together and we smoke hookah together, yeah, and we talk a lot about the politics.
And well, Basel, this film has been in the making since your childhood, as you've sort of been filming things from a young age, but also your parents documented a lot too, and they were activists, which we see in the film. How difficult was it for you and Yuval as well to edit everything down and decide what to put into the film?
Yeah, was not easy because we have like tens of thousands of footage, not just me, my parents that document here, but many activists, many people around, many friends of mine also filming what's going on and documentation. It's an area, like the other day we talked, me and Yuval, about it. It's an area where you find so much footage, like a rare something happened that it's not captured in a video or a footage. Like other places in the West Bank, so many things could happen and nobody could film that. But our area, it's the opposite. So yeah, we have full, like a lot of footage and videos from all the activists that start to film more than 20 years ago until today. Also, it's we want to choose the footage and the videos that shows the reality in a powerful way, and the strongest footage kind of to attract and to explain to the audience what's happening.
And Yuval, you mentioned that on your first meeting, things got quite scary and there was an incident. How long did it take you to get used to filming on the ground with these incidents where there would be the systematic destruction and attacks from Israeli forces and officials?
Yeah, I'm not sure I ever really got used to it. It's something that you are there, and when you're documenting the occupation and what it looks like, you can't really know what will happen, and things can it can be a very normal and calm day, and then settlers come down from the outpost that is just around the hill and they attack the village, or you can wake up in the morning and think that we're going to edit a house demolition, and then bulldozers enter the village and a real house demolition happens. For me, the most frightening aspects were the settler attacks. Honestly, it was scarier than the military. The military is only scary for me when it comes at night, because at night they don't allow you to film, and they use much more violence. Like the option that they just shoot you while they're invading the village is very much there, and people got beat up and tortured, and you cannot film. The demolitions that are happening were horrible. Like they drain you emotionally completely, because the army tries to stop you from documenting, and this is all happening in Masafriata, which is like a very hot mountainous region, and you see people being torn away from their houses just because they are Palestinians, that the military does not give them. This is the policy. They acknowledge that they are on their own lands, that it's private Palestinian land, but they refuse to give them building permits. They decline all of the requests for building permits, therefore making their existence illegal. And this is because, under military law, that the Israeli military can decide for people who cannot vote, who cannot influence the law, what is legal and what is illegal. So law is used as a weapon to kick them away from there, as documents show as well. So I think, to know all of this politically and then to watch it unfolding in the most sort of direct way was really, really heartbreaking and horrible. And it's part of what we tried to show in the film. Not to speak about, a lot of people talk about Israel and Palestine in really abstract, or not abstract, but like in a dry way of like you're reading a human rights report or something. But actually there's a human face to how this looks like, and there are effects that reverberate throughout generations. I mean, we spoke about Basel and his father and his grandfather, all born into this kind of life. And I think our film is an attempt to show the emotional consequences as well.
Yes, and you've mentioned before that the goal was to bring some emotion to the human situation beyond just talking about the politics and what feels like an abstract problem at times to people around the world. And you're both journalists and you felt that articles were only going so far. I think the film gives you a real sense of the emotional experience in a lot of ways. As I mentioned just before we started this interview, it's got so many aspects to it in terms of the way you tell the story. And one of those aspects is humour, that you manage to somehow interweave at times that often seem like the worst. And so I just wanted to ask about those shared moments of humour between you and Basel, Yuval, and ask, if it was important for you to include moments like that and if it was like conscientiously thought out to show that human side.
Look, first of all, I'll be honest, like humor is such a big part of life in Masafriata. Like people are constantly relying, resorting to humor to I don't know. I mean, maybe it's related to like when life is filled with misery and so absurd, then you use like black humor in a way, to deal with it, or maybe it's just how funny the people are, and really, I mean, it's humor is very much part of life, and it was important for us. First of all, it was easy to show it because it exists quite a lot. And second of all, yes, I mean, the process of dehumanization is always when when you put one label, when you minimize the entire human experience to one thing. And the dehumanization is labeling an entire people or as evil, but also there's a form of dehumanization in just painting a very simplistic version of a victim that is just passive and the reality is not like that. I mean, people are, despite being victims of brutality and of occupation, they're holding on to life, as Basel says in the film, and funny. And yes, humor is a part of the way me and Basel communicate. And it's like we wanted the film to have that the audience will feel different kinds of emotions, and as they go through what is often very, very violent 95 minutes. But it's not only about the violence. There is much more in our film.
And Basel, throughout the film, we also see the camera as a tool of resistance against the destruction and the violent displacement by Israel. How important was it for you to not just show like the struggle involved in resisting occupation, but also showing the difficulty in actually documenting the struggle?
Very important, yeah, to show to the people that we pay price and we put ourselves in not easy situation to go film these things. And the Israelis like try to do anything to prevent us from filming. Like look at Gaza today, there is like 180 journalists and influencers on social media that are killed because of they using cameras and they're filming the genocide they committed there. I mean, here as well, like it's not like there, but they beated me physically. They tried to prevent me, and they invaded my home and they confiscated like 5 cameras, and they take many of the activist cameras in the field. I mean, this is like very few footage that we bought in the video in the movie, from footage like how the challenges that they are try to put in front of us to prevent us from filming and documenting what they are doing to us. I don't think it's act of resistance using the camera, because I still think it's but it's kind of very important tool that takes the evidence and shows the evidence of what's going on the ground.
That was No Other Lands, Yuval Abraham and Basel Adra speaking with Hassan Anderson. And finally, to Sing Sing, a poetic, you might say anthemic feature nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Actor. The prison drama, a powerful force in its own right, has also spurred the return of the play performed by the prisoners in the film Breaking the Mummy's Code, which has been brought back to the New York stage. And the film has also proven to have a potent life at screenings within US prisons too. I spoke to the director Greg Kwedar last year, ahead of the film's release in the UK, and I asked about the revolving relationship between the principal cast, in particular tough nut Divine Eye, played by Clarence Macklin, and John Whitfield, played by Coleman Domingo, who's nominated for Best Actor for the role.
The interesting thing within this project is this alchemy that's happening from established actors like Coleman, who is really at the height of his powers, coming into a space with men with real lived experience who actually, I mean, have quite a lot of training, through this program on the stage. Yeah. It just happens to be in the exact setting that the movie exists within, and so they're also able to bring that quality to it of what this really felt like, as well as all the gifts that the program offered in terms of like this true almost miraculous vulnerability that has come through their own personal evolution, and they're bringing that to the picture as well. And you also mentioned something about tenderness kind of as you were building up to the question, and that is something that was very important to the cast in these performances, most notably by Coleman. As he was engaging with his project, one of the early conversations I had with him is like, I want my performance to stand on 3 pillars. I want it to be honest, I want it to be elegant, and I want it to be tender. And what I didn't realize was that became kind of like a lens by which to view almost the entire process of making the film. And when Coleman and Clarence met, they first met on a Zoom actually in development as we were still working on the script. And we were sort of writing this new version of the script and rehearsing it in tandem, and they would hop on Zoom and they would read these scenes. We would break them down and we would talk about what we would write next. And so we were rehearsing and writing like back and forth. But when they first met, the chemistry was there, right, from the beginning.
Chemistry in both ways, maybe. There is a little bit of a pugilistic thing about it as much as there is a tenderness to it.
Well, in a story at its core about a friendship, I think what's special about it is that these are 2 characters in the story as well as in life who probably wouldn't have been friends outside of this circumstance. They couldn't have been more different from each other or come from very different backgrounds, but find a unifying force through the process and realizing how they fit together in the most unlikely ways, and through this journey become almost closer than family. And I was watching that sort of unfold with one of the men who was actually playing a version of himself, and then another man who's sort of channeling the spirit of that actual guy bloom into their own special friendships in real time. It was really a marvel.
It's amazing, and their chemistry is palpable. I mean, it jumps off the screen. It's a delight to behold, and it's also scary in parts as well. I mean, perhaps necessarily. I don't mean just the threats of violence. I mean that the unlocking of a key into a deeper part of yourself is obviously lead to all sorts of things and conversations. Also, it seems like you've made a drama about drama, and these men are acting. They're pretending to be actors, and they are actors as well. There's a very interesting thing there, no more so than Divine Eye, Clarence's character, who wants to be the Prince of Denmark. He wants to be Hamlet, and he soliloquizes. And he's obviously also a man who is on an existential mission himself, like that character. Did he suggest that? Did you suggest that? Was that workshopped? Because it's obviously so perfect. That reading of those lines is amazing, right?
Well, he actually played Hamlet and delivered that soliloquy in 2005 in the original staging of Mummy's Code. And so he was the resident Shakespearean of the group, and for whatever reason, he really connected to the voice of that writing, at a very critical moment in his life where, he was one of the most feared men of Sing Sing and was someone who got respect that way and used it in many ways as a survival mechanism. And yet, as he came into this work, one of the sonnets were one of the first things that he had access to in a Shakespeare workshop in the program, and there was something about the music of that, the rhythm that was starting to, like a little hammer, start to knock at this sort of veneer, and then penetrate into a deeper place where he found that the pen truly was mightier than the sword.
Yeah, his journey, for want of a better word, is very profound in this film. It's really wonderful. And then Divine G's character also has this journey. He is looking to get out, and he has it seems like through his time, he's had various parole hearings. And there's a fantastic scene, and this is about the truth and reality of acting and whether it's sort of it's a super truth, whether it can deliver a super truth. And that is how well you should act in your parole hearing before the governors or whoever that is. That's an amazing thing. Was that workshopped, or was that part of the thing? Because that's an amazing thing. How well should you do it in order to be believable, in order to get out, right?
Well, that's very interesting scene and how it came together, because when we were writing that, I had come across a parole transcript in the New York Times, and I just remember reading this record of this hearing and being so riveted because on one side of the table, you have these commissioners who are doing maybe their 12th case of the day and it's sort of very casually going through these proceedings. And on the other side of that table, there's someone literally fighting for their life. And I remember calling Divine G afterwards and saying, I have this idea for your clemency hearing. I read this transcript in the New York Times. What if we took a bunch of transcripts and cobbled together this scene and be real questions that were actually asked of people? And he was like, wow, that's really interesting. Or you could just use my transcript. And so
that's powerful stuff.
He was actually asked in that hearing, are you acting in this interview? And in the transcript, you see him start to grapple with that and almost sort of fall apart. And I remember on the day when we were shooting that with Coleman, initially when he was asked that question, Coleman's response as an actor was to fight back, and to really sort of say, no, of course, there's something bigger here happening and I'm being sincere. And after that first take, I remember talking to him and I was like, when you're asked that question, it's over. There's no coming back from that. He's like, oh, that's a nice note. Thank you. But then when he started rolling, he gets asked a question. You see his face fall and all manner of tragedy and anger and every emotion in the color wheel play across that until there's a resignation in a way. And I'm just like, wow, to be a witness to something that profound, to be in the room for that was a gift.
That was Greg Kwedar, director of Sing Sing. And that is all for today's show. My thanks to Hassan Anderson, Gunnar Gronlid and Fernando Augusto Pacheco. For more of Faye's interview with Pierre, listen to the Monocle Weekly, which is available now. And if that's not enough, Faye will have a special weekly episode with a full reaction to who won at this year's Academy Awards next week following the ceremony. Good luck, all filmmakers. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. Thanks also to Flynn Simons for his editing help this week. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bounds, thank you for tuning in.